The endpoint assessment process is new to apprenticeships and was brought in when standards were introduced a couple of years ago. The whole theory behind endpoint assessment now is that it's not continuous assessment during the apprenticeship, but rather an assessment at the end of the apprenticeship to see what the apprentice has learned and to gauge them against the standard at that point.
What I understand about the endpoint assessment process is that it's a formalised way for the EPAO to evaluate the achievements of the apprentice over the course of their apprenticeship year and to see whether they can actually do the job that we appointed them for in the first place.
So endpoint assessment is made up of 3 parts. There's the project that we do, which is making a video following a brief. There's the pitch that we have to do for the project, which is like professional standards, showing that we understand it, we know our idea, and the professional discussion.
It's changed now from ongoing assessment throughout the year to one sort of gateway pathway where an apprentice gets to the point where they've had all of their learning, they've processed everything, everyone's happy, the training provider, the employer, the apprentice feel they're ready to sit a kind of endpoint test that tests all of their skills and learning from throughout the year. And then they're issued with a project or a kind of set test, and they're given a fixed period of time or a date when that's going to happen or when they'll be given a deadline, and then they'll go through that with their external assessor coming in who won't be the training provider to see if they've actually learnt what they're supposed to have learnt throughout the year.
When I started my apprenticeship, I knew absolutely nothing about the EPA. So we were told that there was a kind of exam kind of thing at the end, but it was very vague, and it was just kind of making sure that we were prepared for anything that was going to happen because we had no idea what was going on. And I feel like within the industry you always get moments like that, so it was just making sure that we were doing everything we could to prepare for the unknown. During my apprenticeship I prepared for the EPA by keeping hold of all the documents that I created, like by myself, and also making sure that I knew my job really well. Based on my year as a BBC apprentice, the advice I'd give to the current apprentices is you really need to make sure that you have a good working relationship with your team and that you have a supportive system around you actually in your placement, and also let your placement know what kind of different tasks you'll be doing. So make sure you cover all bases, so you need production management, you need editorial, and you need to kind of cover some of the digital aspects, because you will get cut, even if you're just putting a placement for production management or editorial, you will be asked questions in the other speciality. So make sure that you have as much knowledge as you can possibly have.
Endpoint assessment is a external assessment at the end of our course. It's where we have to put a pitch together to give off what we've learned for the year and also an idea of what we feel we could input from what we've learned.
Throughout the year you are prepared for your EPA. You're given documents and literature for you to have a look at. The trainer's always supporting you. If you've got any questions at all, they're always there at hand to answer any questions, any concerns that you have, even with nerves, constantly reassuring you throughout the year. You are given a lot of training, so information that will help you with your EPA. So the endpoint assessment, you've got to produce certain things, but throughout the year you are taught how to do that, so you're not left in the dark completely, but so that you are constantly being prepared for the EPA throughout the training year.
With endpoint assessment, it comes down to after the whole year, September, you have endpoint assessment, and it's 40%, and 20%.
We've been prepared for endpoint assessment by doing practicing, we've been practicing pitching, we've been given briefs to follow, we have professional discussions every training block, so I feel very prepared for it.
It's really early days for us, so they're not even midway through their apprenticeship, but the training provider's already been talking about the endpoint assessment from the beginning. We've looked at how long the job contract would be to make sure that there's time for them to get ready to go through the gateway. It's kind of referenced every time we do a kind of check with the apprentice, make sure they're on target and they're learning what they need to throughout the year so that they can be prepared for the endpoint assessment.
Well, we've had college training, which has been good. We've had a lot of equipment use and experience from people that have been in the industry to show us what to do. And then on the other side of that, we have had hands-on experience on the job and seen what exactly is required, so that when we do come up with ideas for pitches, we know exactly what they're looking for.
So during my apprenticeship, at the beginning didn't really know how to prepare. I kept a reflective log, which was really useful because it helped me see what I had done at the very start of the year, which I couldn't remember. So it helped me look back and be like, oh yeah, I did this. I kept all the stuff that I'd done obviously saved on my laptop, so that meant it was easy for me to provide evidence of the work that I had done. And I used the help sheet that came along with the assessment to mark off all the things that I needed to put in my essay. If you're going through the EPA, my advice would be it's not as bad as it seems, so stay calm. When you get given the information, it's actually really easy just to follow it, and if you can just see exactly what they're looking for, you know exactly what you need to put into your essays or into your projects or any of that stuff. I would recommend keeping a reflective log, because that means that you know what you've done at the start of the year and you can remember everything that you've been through.
We are continually working with AIM Awards, who are our endpoint assessment organisation in the 2 standards we deliver. We're working with them to see what can be done within the training to make sure that the apprentices are more prepared. We are looking at giving predicted grades for our apprentices. So even though we don't have any grade system on the apprenticeship as we go through, the qualification is simply a pass or fail. We are looking at grading our apprentices as they go through and aligning that to the grade system of the endpoint assessment. We look at past examples which AIM provide for us. We also look at past feedback that we've had from our apprentices who've gone through endpoint assessment, and we're looking to do more of that, kind of to feed that into what we deliver, and to work as closely as possible with the employer and with AIM Awards to deliver a really good endpoint assessment.
We've been prepared for endpoint assessment, as quite recently we did a pitch, which will be exactly what we do when it comes to the end of the year, which we'll have to pitch an idea with a treatment, and we did exactly that to replicate it. So by the end of the year, when it comes to it, we've basically already done 40% in practice rehearsal, so it's not all strange, it's all, we know what we're doing. I think to help further for endpoint assessment, keep on track of replicating what's going to happen by the end of the year, so keep up with pitches so they get refreshed and things like that, and we have a lot of one-to-ones, which I think is good, and we could have even more of those.
We get an awful lot of support from our training provider. In truth, I would be lost without them. They are certainly the part of the business that understands the world of the endpoint assessment. They've provided an awful lot of guidance and help and support, not just to me in terms of the formalities of the process, but to the apprentices themselves as well over the course of the apprenticeship, and they work tirelessly to get the apprentices ready for that assessment. I found that one of the great things that we do to help prepare the apprentices for the endpoint assessment, and we work hand in hand with the training provider on this, is providing the reassurances to them that actually the recruitment process that they went through to get onto the scheme in the first place is very robust, and that actually achieving the endpoint assessment, completing the endpoint assessment is very well within their reach.
So to me, the endpoint assessment was the completing factor in the apprenticeship. It was what brought it all together at the end in the final assessment. The main piece of advice I would give is just to roll with it, to take what comes to you, because things can go wrong and things can go not the way you've planned, but you just have to keep going, you have to keep trying, because that is what the industry is like. It's not always predictable, and it's not always going to be what you expected it to be yesterday, and you just need to adapt with that. And the endpoint assessment is exactly the same. In the days before the endpoint assessment, the way that I prepared for the professional discussion was exactly how I prepare for interviews now. And because the BBC in particular has competency-based interviews, the way that I prepare for interviews and for the professional discussion was to write out all of the competencies and write out 2 to 3 examples, practical examples from my job or from my experience that I could speak about in an interview, and that would meet those criteria.
One thing I would add is that the way the EPA has been constructed is quite a prescriptive process, and from my point of view as the employer, that is quite difficult, and I think there are some benefits to be had from allowing the training provider to drive that process a bit more rather than it the driving of the process resting in the hands of the employer.
I know for myself I'm more of a hands-on person. I learn on the job less than from what I learn on paper, and the brilliance of this apprenticeship is that it's given me that opportunity.